That's my job. And go on upstairs. You can forget about those Fordzilla tickets. I'm giving them to somebody else.
Everything you thought you knew about home improvement was a lie. The father figure America loved spent 2 years in prison for selling cocaine. The beautiful tool girl claims he pulled open his robe and showed her everything on her very first day. His TV wife hated him so much they never spoke off camera. One child star quit at the peak of fame. Another married a 33-year-old woman when he was still in high school. The third keeps getting arrested for hurting his girlfriends. The truth about TV's most beloved family show is so dark and twisted, Disney has tried to bury it for decades. It all started with a cold Boston day in the 1970s. TV producer Russell Morrish was driving through the city when he spotted something strange. A group of people standing in the snow, watching a construction site through a wooden wall. They were freezing, but they couldn't look away. That simple scene lit a spark in Morrish's mind. If people were this curious about building projects out in the cold, imagine how many would watch it from their living rooms. Morrish already had a reputation. He was the one who brought Julia Child to television. But now, as he was fixing up his own old farmhouse, an idea took shape. In 1979, he launched This Old House on Boston's WGBH. The first project was a $30,000 renovation in Dorchester. It was an instant hit, pulling huge ratings and quickly spreading across the country. Over time, it won Emmy Awards and stayed on air for decades, becoming the blueprint for every home renovation show that followed. Meanwhile, in comedy clubs across the U.S., a guy named Tim Allen was making people laugh with something different. His act wasn't just jokes. It was a loud, clumsy, proudly masculine take on life. He grunted like a caveman, loved power tools, and made fun of how men struggled with modern family life. His stand-up special, Men Are Pigs, caught the eye of Disney's Michael Eisner. Allen's comedy felt like it could work on TV. He wasn't just funny. He was familiar, like that neighbor who always messes up his DIY projects. At the same time, 3 veteran TV writers were building something of their own. Matt Williams, Carmen Finestra, and David McFadzean were working on a sitcom parody of This Old House. They called it Hammer Time, and the main character was a tool-obsessed host based on Bob Vila. But once they saw Allen's comedy, everything changed. The show was reworked just for him and renamed Home Improvement. With its show-within-a-show concept, called Tool Time, it balanced jokes about tools with stories about family. It was a perfect setup, and to make it even more meta, Bob Vila later guest-starred on Home Improvement, while Allen returned the favor on Vila's real show. Still, something was missing. Originally, the role of Tim Taylor's wife, Jill, went to actress Frances Fisher, but she didn't quite click with the show's tone. Then came Patricia Richardson. She was smart, sharp, and had instant chemistry with Allen. ABC wanted someone who could go toe-to-toe with him, not just the patient wife, but someone who challenged him. Richardson did just that. She made Jill a voice of reason, a partner, and even a woman with her own dreams. When she decided to leave after 8 seasons, producers didn't even consider replacing her. Without Jill, the show had no heart. Behind the scenes, another lucky twist helped shape the show. Richard Karn, who played Al Borland, wasn't even supposed to be on Home Improvement. In 1989, Karn had just moved to Los Angeles and was barely making ends meet. One day, he rolled through a stop sign and got sent to traffic school. There, by total chance, he sat next to a casting agent who told him about auditions for a new sitcom. The role was technically taken, but Karn auditioned anyway. When the original actor had to drop out, Karn was called back. Even after landing the role, he kept working as an apartment manager until the end of the first season, just in case it didn't work out. Ironically, The man who gave up the role of Al Borland, Stephen Tobolowsky, had been offered a great deal, $16,000 per episode. But it came with strings. The contract would stop him from doing movies, and with a baby on the way, he couldn't take the risk. He turned it down and focused on film. That gamble paid off, and he landed big roles in Groundhog Day and Single White Female. Looking back, he had no regrets. His career went in a completely different and successful direction. Casting choices shaped more than just Al. When they were looking for someone to play the Tool Time Girl, two women stood out, Pamela Anderson and Ashley Judd. Anderson got the part, but the producers thought Judd was too talented for such a small role. They offered to create a whole new character for her, Tim's sister. Judd thought about it for 2 days, then said no. She believed her future was in movies. She was right. While Anderson became a household name thanks to Baywatch, Judd went on to star in films like Double Jeopardy and Kiss the Girls. And then there was Wilson, the wise, soft-spoken neighbor whose face we never saw. That idea came straight from Tim Allen's childhood. As a kid, he was too short to see over his backyard fence, so he only saw part of his neighbor's face. When he pitched his sitcom idea to Disney, he included that detail, saying, "I've got this neighbor I can't see." It became a running gag that fans loved. Every episode found a new way to hide Wilson's face, behind fences, tools, even cakes. The mystery stayed alive until the very end, when Earl Hindman finally revealed his face to the studio audience after the last episode. When Home Improvement hit TV screens, it didn't just do well, it exploded. In its very first season, it landed at number 4 in the ratings. But that was only the beginning. By the 1993 to 1994 season, the show had climbed even higher, reaching number 2 in the entire country. That meant over 35 million people were watching each week. Only 60 Minutes had more viewers. And Home Improvement was pulling bigger numbers than hits like Seinfeld and Roseanne. For 2 straight weeks in December 1994, it even hit number 1. That kind of success was almost unheard of for a family sitcom. The show's popularity wasn't just a fluke or a one-season wonder. It stayed in the top 10 for all 8 years it was on the air. Even as other shows came and went, Home Improvement kept a loyal audience. At its peak in Season 3, around 35 million Americans tuned in every week to see what kind of trouble Tim, the Tool Man Taylor, would get into. And when the show finally wrapped up in 1999, it still had nearly 18 million viewers, proof that it remained a favorite right to the end. While the show was taking over TV, Tim Allen was quietly making entertainment history. In one single week in November 1994, he did something almost no one else ever had. He starred in the number 1 movie at the box office, The Santa Claus. He also had the top spot on the New York Times bestseller list with his book, Don't Stand Too Close to a Naked Man. And of course, he was also the star of the number 1 show on television. All of that happened at the same time. The movie went on to earn nearly $200 million around the world. His book, full of funny takes on being a man and dealing with insecurities, struck a chord with readers across the country. That week made it clear Tim Allen wasn't just a sitcom star. He was a force in books, film, and TV all at once. And that kind of success came with a big paycheck. By the time Home Improvement ended, he was earning $1.25 million for every episode, one of the highest salaries in TV history. Part of what kept the show fresh was how it kept changing in clever ways. Starting in Season 2, they added short scenes at the beginning of each episode, little comedy moments before the opening credits rolled. It gave the audience a quick laugh before the main story even started. Then, Beginning in Season 4, the show added animated versions of the logo that changed every episode. These little cartoons became something fans looked forward to. The show also had a smart setup that made it different from other family sitcoms. It wasn't just about Tim's home life. It was also about his fake show within a show, Tool Time, where he'd often mess up with power tools and need saving from his assistant, Al. That setup gave writers twice the space to play with, fun at home and chaos at work, and made the show stand out from everything else on TV. But the laughs weren't the only thing making waves. The money was massive. By 1996, just 5 years in, the show had already made more than $500 million in syndication. That's before DVD sales, streaming, or reruns around the world. Tim Allen's salary shot up along with the show's value. He started out making a few $100,000 per episode, but by the end, he was pulling in over $1 million every week. And he wasn't the only one cashing in. The show made serious money for the network and the production company too. Still, not everyone was paid equally. Patricia Richardson, who played Tim's wife, was offered much less than Allen when the network wanted to do a 9th season. She turned it down, and the show ended. That decision highlighted a problem many women in Hollywood still face: being paid less than their male co-stars, even on massively successful shows. Before he became famous for grunting on TV, Tim Allen lived a very different kind of life. On October 2nd, 1978, when he was 25 years old, everything changed. He was caught at an airport in Michigan with over a pound of cocaine in his bag. That wasn't just bad, it was potentially life-ending. Michigan had just passed a law saying that if you had that much cocaine, you could go to prison for the rest of your life. Faced with that terrifying future, Allen made a choice. He gave the authorities names, lots of them. He helped them take down other people in the drug business, including some big players. Because of this, his case was moved from state court to federal court, which meant he didn't have to face that life sentence. Instead, he spent 2 years and 4 months in prison. It wasn't easy, but it was a lot better than what could have happened. Prison changed him. He learned to survive by making people laugh. He used humor to deal with the fear, the anger, and the long days. He even joked with guards by taping pictures of Richard Nixon on his cell door. That humor became his way forward. But the anger stayed, even after he got out and became famous. That part of him didn't go away. People who worked with him later would see it. Sometimes he'd lose his temper, storm off set, or argue with directors. That time behind bars left scars. After prison, Allen found a second chance. He started doing stand-up comedy. Then came Home Improvement. The show made him a star. But even with fame, money, and a hit series, his past didn't completely let go. In 1997, during the peak of his success, it happened again. He was speeding in his Ferrari, 70 in a 40 zone, when he got pulled over. His blood alcohol level was nearly twice the legal limit. He admitted he'd been drinking most of the day. That arrest hit hard. He went to court, got a year of probation, and chose to check into rehab. Filming on the show had to pause. Cast and crew waited while Allen tried to get his life together. He later said it was the best decision he ever made, and since then, he stayed sober. But the drinking had been going on for a while. Even during the earlier seasons of the show, he was struggling. He'd sometimes show up on set hungover or still under the influence. One time in 1994, he was so drunk he couldn't film a key scene, and production had to shut down for the day. It cost the studio a fortune. Behind the scenes, people were frustrated. Allen was hiding a lot. He lied to his wife, felt guilty, ashamed, and alone. The DUI in 1997 finally forced him to face everything he'd been avoiding. There was also something else. In 1994, the FBI contacted him with a warning. His three young co-stars, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Zachary Ty Bryan, and Taron Noah Smith, had become targets. Not from just anyone, but from predators who had taken notice of their growing fame. It scared Allen deeply. He became protective. Maybe too protective. He read through their fan mail himself. He demanded security always be with them. He even refused to let them attend a public event at one point. People around him saw how paranoid he'd become. Some thought he went too far. But in his mind, it was better to be safe than sorry. Pamela Anderson was just getting started in Hollywood when she landed a role on Home Improvement. She played Lisa, the tool time girl, and even though her job mostly involved handing tools to Tim Allen and looking good on camera, it was enough to get her noticed. The show was taking off in the early 90s, and Anderson was part of its early success. But then, something bigger came along. She was offered a spot on Baywatch. The role of C.J. Parker, the lifeguard in the red swimsuit, wasn't just another gig. It was a career changer. At first, she tried to do both shows, but the schedules clashed, and it became clear she had to pick one. So she left Home Improvement, and the show quickly replaced her with Debbie Dunning, who became the new Tool Time girl. They explained Anderson's character had gone off to become a paramedic. Years later, she popped back in for a quick guest appearance, saying her character now worked at Detroit Memorial Hospital. But by then, she was already a star on Baywatch, known around the world. That swimsuit, the beach, the slow-motion running, it all became iconic. Decades passed, and then in 2023, Pamela Anderson told a story that shocked a lot of people. She released a memoir, Love, Pamela, and in it she described something she says happened during her first day on the set of Home Improvement, back in 1991. According to her, Tim Allen opened his robe and flashed her. She was 23, he was 37. He joked that he'd seen her naked in Playboy, so now they were even. She says she laughed uncomfortably. The timing of this story was no accident. Her book came out right after the Hulu show Pam and Tommy had been released without her involvement. She said the series made her feel violated, like she'd lost control of her own story. So she wrote her book and also released a Netflix documentary called Pamela, A Love Story. Both were her way of taking her power back, of setting the record straight after years of being treated like a tabloid headline. Tim Allen denied everything. He said it never happened, that he would never do such a thing. When asked again later, he added that Anderson must have had a strange memory of the past. But she didn't back down. In interviews, she said it did happen. She figured he had to deny it, because if he admitted it in today's world, it could ruin him. Still, she added that he didn't seem like he had bad intentions. She said it felt more like a bad joke, something a comedian might have thought was funny back then, but wouldn't try now. As the debate played out in the media, an old blooper resurfaced online. It showed Tim Allen lifting his kilt in front of his co-star, Patricia Richardson, during a 1992 taping. But Richardson defended him, saying she was only surprised that he lifted the kilt, not by what was underneath, since he was wearing boxer shorts. At the height of his fame, Jonathan Taylor Thomas did something that no one saw coming. He left Home Improvement in 1998, even though he was one of the most popular teen stars in the world. He was just 17 years old, making around $50,000 per episode, and fans expected him to ride the wave for as long as he could. But Thomas had a different plan. He wanted to go to school. Not acting school, not a break, real school, college. He didn't hesitate. There were no conditions or promises that could change his mind. He told everyone exactly what he wanted. He was leaving, and that was final. His last episode aired in September. His character, Randy, was written off as going to Costa Rica for an environmental program. In real life, Thomas was serious about his future. He wasn't chasing more fame or trying to land a movie deal. He just wanted a normal life. His mom backed him up, saying it was all his choice. And Thomas didn't want any shortcuts. He said getting into college because of his name wouldn't mean much if he couldn't keep up with the work. That kind of thinking was rare for a teenage celebrity, especially one who had voiced young Simba in The Lion King and starred in hit films like Man of the House. But Thomas didn't care about being the biggest name in Hollywood. He wanted something different. Not everyone understood. Tim Allen, who played his TV dad, was confused and frustrated. He didn't keep those feelings private. He said in interviews that he didn't really get why Thomas left, especially since Thomas later acted in a few films. That public doubt didn't sit well with Thomas. He didn't like being second-guessed, especially not by someone he had worked with for years. The tension between them only got worse when Thomas didn't show up for the series finale in 1999. He was the only main cast member who didn't return. Patricia Richardson, who played his mom on the show, said it was a sore subject and suggested Thomas wasn't getting the best advice at the time. It became clear that there were hard feelings behind the scenes. Fans noticed, so did the press. Losing Thomas created a big hole in the show's final season. His character had been the smart, thoughtful one, the middle child who often brought balance to the family. Without him, the dynamic changed. The writers tried to fill the gap by giving more focus to the other two brothers, Brad and Mark, but it wasn't the same. The show had built its rhythm around 3 kids, and suddenly one of them was gone. When Thomas didn't return for the finale, there was no way to give his character a proper goodbye. The ending felt off. Something was missing. Viewers had spent years watching the Taylor family grow, but when it was time to say goodbye, Randy was just gone. Years later, Thomas finally explained more. He said the decision to leave wasn't just about school, it was about health, peace, and having a normal life. He had been working non-stop since he was 8. At one point, he said that if he had tried to keep doing the show while focusing on school, he would have burned out completely. His words were simple but powerful. I would have put myself in an early grave. He wasn't being dramatic. He was just being honest. He needed time to breathe. After leaving the spotlight, Thomas didn't chase new roles. Instead, he studied at Harvard, Columbia, and even a university in Scotland. He liked sitting in libraries, reading, being around students who didn't see him as a celebrity. To him, that was exciting in a way that Hollywood no longer was. He never seemed bitter. When he looked back, he said he remembered the good times, the fun moments, and the lessons he learned. Fame had been a part of his life, but it didn't define him. He never wanted it to. When Home Improvement was on the air, it looked like Tim Allen and Patricia Richardson had the perfect working relationship. They joked, they bickered like a real couple, and audiences loved it. But off-screen, things weren't so smooth. Behind the scenes, their relationship was tense and distant. Richardson later said they were never really friends, didn't hang out after work, and don't keep in touch today. Things got worse when Tim Allen was given more power on the show. By the 6th season, he had an executive producer credit, which meant he had more say in what happened on set. Richardson didn't get the same opportunity, even though she was constantly giving feedback and helping shape her character. This imbalance created tension during filming. Arguments happened off-camera, and it sometimes felt like the show could fall apart. Then came the reboot rumors. Allen told the press that everyone in the cast was excited to return, but Richardson and co-star Jonathan Taylor Thomas hadn't even been asked. Richardson went public, calling out Allen for making false claims, and it was clear the old problems hadn't gone away. While all of that was going on, Richardson was fighting another battle. She didn't want Jill, her character, to be just another sitcom wife who laughs at her husband's jokes and stays in the background. She wanted Jill to be smart, independent, and strong. From the start, she pushed back against lazy gendered jokes and worked hard to give her character depth. She often clashed with the writing team, but she stood her ground. Richardson later said she was the only woman on the set with any real creative input, and she had to speak up for herself constantly. Her efforts paid off. She earned 4 Emmy nominations and 2 Golden Globe nominations during the show's run. But one of the biggest problems was the money. By 1998, Tim Allen was making around $1.25 million per episode. Richardson was paid far less. When the network wanted to do a 9th season, they offered Allen $2 million per episode. Richardson was offered half that. Tired of being underpaid and underappreciated, she pushed back. She asked for equal pay and an executive producer credit, knowing full well that Disney wouldn't go for it. It was her way of walking away. She later said that she'd worked hard for years, was a big reason women watched the show, and had never even earned a third of what Allen made. Leaving the show was her way of sending a message. Years later, the show's creators decided they'd had enough. In 2013, they sued Disney for more than $40 million. They claimed Disney had sold syndication rights for far less than they were worth, even giving away the rights in New York, the biggest TV market in the country, without making a dime. The creators said they were owed a huge share of the profits and that Disney never properly paid them. The show had made about $1.5 billion for the studio, but the people who built it were left fighting for their share. The legal battle went on for 6 years. Disney tried to get the case thrown out using a loophole in the original contracts, but in 2019, just before the case was set to go to trial, they finally reached a settlement. Taron Noah Smith was just 17 years old when he took his parents to court. He had spent 8 years playing Mark Taylor on Home Improvement and earned a $1.5 million trust fund along the way. But instead of enjoying the success, he accused his parents of misusing his money. He said they spent it on their own bills, even their house. He felt like he was supporting the entire family, and he wanted early access to the money, even though California law said he had to wait until he was 18. His mother, Candy Benessy, pushed back hard. She said they couldn't have touched the money even if they wanted to, and that they were only trying to protect it. The judge agreed with her. Taron had to wait until his 18th birthday to get the money. At the time, the situation seemed like a complete breakdown between a son and his parents. But years later, Taron admitted that he had been wrong. He blamed the fight on teenage frustration, and he apologized. His parents forgave him. That peace came only after life had hit him with some hard lessons, including a failed marriage and money problems. That marriage was a whole story by itself. When Taron married Heidi Van Pelt, people couldn't believe it. He was 17. She was 33. The age gap alone was enough to make headlines, but there was more. They had met when he was just 14, and she was already 30. His parents were alarmed. They tried to separate them, but Taron was convinced he was in love. At one point, his parents even let her stay in their home, hoping it would make things better. It didn't. Taron ran off, married her, and then sued his parents. People started wondering if Heidi was the reason he turned against them. His mother hinted that Heidi might have been after his money. The two of them opened a vegan restaurant together, but the marriage didn't last. They divorced 6 years later. When it ended, it wasn't quiet. Taron's lawyer said Heidi had destroyed his finances and left his house in ruins. That house was eventually foreclosed. Taron's post-acting life became a long list of troubles. In 2012, police found him parked at a fire hydrant in the middle of the night. There was a strong smell of marijuana, and they found hash in the car. He was charged with driving under the influence and drug possession. He pleaded guilty and got probation, along with drug education programs. His Los Angeles home, once worth $800,000, was a wreck. His lawyer blamed Heidi for the whole mess. By then, Taran had already left acting behind. He said he knew, even when the show ended, that he didn't want to be in front of the camera anymore. While Taran was dealing with all this, another home improvement star was also making headlines, but for all the wrong reasons. Zachary Ty Bryan, who played Taran's older brother Brad, faced repeated arrests for domestic violence. In January 2025, he was arrested in South Carolina. That wasn't the first time. In 2023, he was arrested in Oregon after a physical fight that led to multiple assault charges. He cut a plea deal to avoid serious jail time. A few months later, he was found asleep in his car after drinking and refused a sobriety test. That arrest happened in Oklahoma, and yet another one followed in California. That one was serious. Felony DUI, and it wasn't his first. In fact, it was his fourth DUI in 10 years. His blood alcohol level was nearly twice the legal limit. Even Tim Allen, who had played his father on the show, spoke up. He called Zach a great kid who had become a complex man. He said Zach had lost touch with the person he used to be.